what you wanna hear. I can't help it if you wanna hear. And if you need more time.
Today, we are thrilled to sit down with Chris Buck, the phenomenal guitarist behind Cardinal Black. From South Wales, Chris has taken the music world by storm with his soulful, blues-infused riffs, showcased in his Friday Fretworks series, and Cardinal Black's chart-topping debut, January Came Close. With their new release, Midnight at the Valencia, earning rave reviews and nods from icons like Slash, Chris and his band are redefining alt-rock. Get ready for an exclusive dive into his gear, creative process, and the rise of Cardinal Black. Let's get started. Now here's the Trout with Chris.
Meet a financial advisor who learns what truly matters to you, creating financial strategies that support a life you love. That's David Smith with Edward Jones. His years of experience has assisted dozens of clients, just like you, to weave their way through the maze of financial opportunities available. One quick call at 469-372-1587 and David can assist your financial wants and needs. That's David Smith with Edward Jones at 469-372-1587. Remember, it's your financial future, make it a rewarding one. David Smith at 469-372-1587.
All right, let's start with something simple. I have notes here, but first let's talk about Tom, because I said go. So when your PR guy, who I've known for several years, sent me information about you, he sends me information about people. Hey, would you mind talking to him? And my agreement's always the same. I gotta like him. He kind of knows my taste anyway, and I watched your video with the one driving in the car.
Oh right, need more time. Yeah,
the newest one. And I'm looking at Tom going like, before I even listen to her, I look at Tom and go, is this guy from Alabama? I mean, he looks like a redneck from the South, which I live in Dallas, so I'm a Southern person. And then he has that kind of soulful voice that kind of lends itself to the Southern appeal.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's really what caught my attention. And then everything I read about you guys, and this is what your PR John told me. He said, you guys sell out. Not sell out like you sell out. You sell out.
Yeah.
No, we're not sellouts. So we just, So I'm looking at, I do a lot of research on everybody I interview. And I'm looking at, of course, you are coming to Texas. You're doing Antoine's.
Yeah.
It's sold out. I started looking at the places. Sold out. You guys kind of had, your history is interesting to me from the standpoint that there was a chance when you were all together, or some of you were together years ago, and then creative differences. There's an interesting article about in bands, it's like people like my last band broke up. My wife says, are you disappointed? I go, how many bands do you break up over, That was during COVID. That was a different thing.
Yeah.
But then you kind of like years later, some of you got together. Were you in the original Tom band? Were you the guitarist?
I was, yeah. I've been there from the start. So bizarrely, we had. So the name of that band was the Tom Hollister Trio, which seems like a very egotistical move on Tom's part, which very much wasn't the case. And we had very little aspirations to actually be a band. So what happened there?
And where did you start? Was it in Bristol, or where did you start?
No, so it was in South Wales. So you could pretty much throw a blanket over kind of a couple of mile radius in South Wales, and it would have covered all of us. We're from very, very close together. And I can remember Tom in school. So Tom is a couple of years older than me. He's probably about 4 years older than me.
So you've all known each other for a long time then?
Yeah, well, I remember Tom in school, but it was that kind of, that age range in school. That in now we're in our 30s, 4 years is nothing. When you're in school, 4 years is a big age range.
Yes,
why the hell would he be hanging out with me? So I remember seeing Tom. I remember seeing him playing in school performances and school concerts and all that kind of stuff, and being a little bit in awe of him. He's a big guy, kind of seemed to have facial hair, at an age when nobody should have had facial hair. He's had 5 o'clock shadow since he was about 15, I think. So I vividly remember in school, but we never really crossed paths. And then his then girlfriend, now wife, her sister was going out with my best friend, and through a guy that I'll be forever indebted to, I guess, or can forever blame, depending on your standpoint. A mate of mine called Ross introduced us, and Tom was doing. To use his words, some Mickey Mouse University degree, basically to escape getting an actual job. Asked me to come and contribute to a part of his coursework for his university degree. So I drove up to Cheltenham. We hit it off, kind of stayed in contact. And actually, pretty much the first thing we did, because we were both absolutely skint, was form a covers band. Because famously, there's not much money to be made in original music.
No,
so we formed a covers band and we started doing that, and then very quickly out of that we started writing. And the Tom Hollister Trio was Tom's final year dissertation piece, I guess. It was the conclusion of his Mickey Mouse degree, to use his words. And we had no aspirations beyond that evening, really. It was meant to be, right, you've got put together a performance, play a couple of tracks, maybe release a CD, 3-track EP or something. Yeah. Show that you've learned something in your last 3 years of this music degree, So it all culminated in a show. We put a show on in Cheltenham, and out of the blue, Steve Winwood showed up through a mutual friend of a friend of a friend of Tom's lecturer. Steve had just come back. It was around the time he did Madison Square Gardens with Eric Clapton, that kind of live album.
I remember that tour. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so he arrived at this venue in Cheltenham with literally nothing but dollars in his pocket. So Tom's wife, lover, tried to charge him to get in. He's like, I'm really sorry, I only have dollars on me. So Tom thankfully intervened, having recognised who it was. And Steve was very kind, very genuine with his feedback and his response, gave us loads of constructive criticism, and said, look, you're very welcome to come and record at my studio. And he has this beautiful studio in the Cotswolds, which is...
I'm sure. And it's in the Cotswolds? Oh, okay.
Exactly. It's just, perfect part of Britain. So before we knew it, it went from being, well, this is just a one-off show to, well, I'm now a rock star. I'm in Steve Winwood's personal studio, and, et cetera, et cetera. So it felt like the ball got rolling very quickly. Retrospectively, it was just a small kind of ripple in a vast ocean. But at the time, it felt very significant to us. And we did that. We kind of morphed from being called the Tom Hollister Trio into TH3, just to try and soften the actual focus on one person. Yeah. Which, in fairness to Tom, he never wanted. And we did a couple of things. We came to the US. We were managed by a guy called Alan Niven, who'd been Guns N' Roses manager earlier in their career, taking them from being like a Sunset Strip band through to Wembley Stadium. And we did a bit of recording in the US. We signed with a US record label, and needless to say, it all imploded when we were kind of I was, I guess, in my late teens, early 20s. Tom was about 64. You would be forgiven for looking at him. But as you kind of referenced it earlier, as much as we tried to do the kind of creative differences, big acrimonious splits of "fuck you, you never want to see you again," the reality was we were doing a wedding on Saturday, so it was like "fuck you, see you Saturday," for Bruno Mars and Kings of Leon, Sex on Fire, and ABBA medleys. So we did that for about 10 years, and kind of various other creative projects. But it always felt like unfinished business. There was a lot of material that we'd written back in about 2009, 2010. It felt like unfinished business, and I guess it was only really a matter of time until it did culminate in something, and that turned into Cardinal Black in May 2021. So literally about 4 years ago to the day was the day that we actually officially launched Cardinal Black, with no expectations really. We had no idea how it was going to be received, if people would like it. I'd been doing quite a lot of stuff on YouTube, just as a means of, kind of making ends meet.
So your own channel? Were you doing your own?
Yeah. So a lot of kind of guitar-centric stuff. So I had a series on YouTube called Friday Fretworks, which, as the name suggests, was a weekly thing. It was every Friday. just, talking about whatever niche element of guitar that I can kind of get my hands on, whether it's old, playing old Les Pauls or whatever. And I'd amassed a little bit of a following on YouTube. So I was relatively confident that at least, even if 10% of the people that follow me on YouTube was interested in original music that I would put out, we might have a little bit of a kind of leg up. And lo and behold, we put out our first song, Tell Me How It Feels, in, like I said, May 2021. And within about 24 hours, that had got to the top of the iTunes and Amazon and Apple Rock charts and all this kind of stuff, and just sort of gave us this unbelievable leg up, that we've kind of been trying to kind of ride that wave ever since. So, 4 years on, I think, relative to the amount of time that we have officially been together as Cardinal Black, taken out of context the shared history that we have, I think relative to the amount of time we've been together, we've kind of seem to have done all right. We've kind of, you referenced the kind of sold out shows in the US and all this kind of stuff. It still is a little bit surreal to us that we can kind of announce shows 5,000 miles away and that anyone would want to show up, never mind enough people to actually sell out a venue. It's a little bit mad. I don't know why people like us. I think you hit the nail on the head a second ago that it's invariably when you least expect something that something will happen, whether it's a standing ovation, whether it's a track to take off in a way you didn't expect, or whether it's a gig to go well that you weren't expecting to go well. That's life, I think, in general. But I think there is a lot to be said for if you're doing it for the right reasons, and if you're doing it from a genuine place that is real and it comes from somewhere good. I don't know, the universe will reward you in some way. It's all very cosmic.
It may not be today, and maybe not tomorrow, but it might be 6 months from now or years from now.
Absolutely. And again, you referenced bumping into people who you've met in the past. That happens so frequently in this industry, because I guess it is quite a small industry that you will run into people that you've met in the past. And again, that is, that just leads into this idea of, well, just be nice. That's, I get asked a lot, I do like, on odd occasions, do guest lectures for like universities and stuff about music, about the music industry and how to try and get on in the music industry. And people are always looking for what's the best piece of advice that you can give. And it's like, be nice, be easy to deal with. Be a pleasure to be around. Don't be a dick. Don't be, don't be hard work, and it will reap rewards. I mean, when we toured with Peter Frampton, that tour went very well for everyone. I think Peter had a great time. We had a great time. It was a particularly good tour for us.
Was this before you got ill? Was this before?
No, so this was one of his finale tours.
Okay.
So he's
was he not? He was not. He's still standing up, or was he sitting?
No, he was seated.
Okay, so it was okay.
So it was initially scheduled for about a year before COVID, or I guess during COVID, probably mid 2020.
I didn't realize I didn't know he'd been sick that long. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think during that time, I guess his illness seemed to have progressed a little bit. So he was sitting down for the shows, and had announced that prior to the shows. So it's not to surprise people, I guess. Yeah. But he was. Aside from that, he was in fine fettle. He was doing like 3+ hours every night. He's incredible. He's a force of nature. Even more impressive considering his illness. But that was just a great tour. We had a blast. It was amazing venues, amazing crowds, and because of, I think, how we just got on with everyone. We kind of minded our P's and Q's. We went out of our way to be pleasant to everyone and not get in the way, and stick to your curfew. If they say you need to be off the stage by 8:30, you're off the stage by 8:28.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. And we just kind of went out of our way to be nice to be around, and consequently they asked us to come out to Europe. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it. The financial implications of doing that would have just probably bankrupted the band. Unfortunately,
I understand.
At that particular time, but you just be nice, be pleasant to be around, and that will reap rewards. Whether that's today, whether that's in 3 years' time. Word travels.
It does make a difference, because Americans expect British people to be nice. That's just what. And I tell my friends, especially people I know in the UK, just come in America, keep talking with an accent, and they won't care.
Yeah, we've found that it's. It's to speak in sweeping, swathing stereotypes, but American audiences seem to be so enthusiastic and so appreciative that a band has gone to the great effort of crossing the Atlantic to come over.
Well, it's a lot of work. Look, there's a lot of people that don't do it because it's so expensive. You got to get visas. You got to go through a lot of work, and traveling. It's a problem. It's a pain in the butt. That's why I knew a great band over in Europe that I said, now they've been together for 10 years, they broke up finally. They broke up, kind of. But I said that you could sell out in America. They go, it's so difficult.
Yeah. It's
you got to have a lot of money behind you to just do it.
Yeah, and we were very fortunate last year when we did that for the first time, that we played a festival in Omaha, Nebraska, which I guess, on the kind of the great map of tour stops is probably not everyone's first kind of port of call, but there's a wonderful couple called Jeff and Vanessa who organise a festival called Playing with Fire in Omaha, and were very sweet to invite us over. So they actually met us, or kind of really got to know us on the Joe Bonamassa Blues Cruise around the Mediterranean.
Oh, so did you play in that?
So we did, yeah. So we did the Mediterranean one, and spent a good amount of time with Jeff and Vanessa, and they, really kind of they'd already offered the kind of idea of coming over to the US and doing their festival prior to that, but it was only really on that cruise where we got into the bare bones of it and kind of broke it down, and essentially that gave us the opportunity, gave us a bit of a free swing, as it were, at America.
You got a foothold.
Yeah, exactly, and they were kind enough to kind of facilitate the visas and all of the kind of bureaucracy around that, and all of the kind of red tape.
That was nice of them to do that. Yeah.
And it gave us a bit of a free swing at Nashville and at LA, which has undoubtedly facilitated this proper tour, this year. So I can't say that would have happened otherwise, but at the same time, we had to be very careful with the money that we did have, or the money that we were earning in the months running up to that tour, to see us through, because it's just astronomically expensive. It's expensive to go anywhere these days. I
don't care where you go. I mean, you got hotel, you got food, you got all that stuff, you got transportation.
Absolutely.
And that's before you walk on stage.
Absolutely. I mean, we were quite significantly in the hole, prior to playing a note, landing in the US, and that was even with Jeff and Vanessa's help, But thankfully, the shows that we did well. We sold a load of merchandise, which helps hugely. So we were very fortunate, but it takes quite a decent amount of cash flow in order to be able to speculate like that in the first place.
Well, and you don't want, as a performer, you don't want to spend your time worrying about that stuff. I mean, really, when you walk on stage, you want to spend whatever you're going to have, 2 hours, hour and a half, whatever time you have. You don't want to be thinking about, I hope we get to that hotel in Omaha.
Yeah.
You don't want any of that stuff.
The funny thing is about me and Tom, I guess, is that we're probably a little guilty of that. We run Cardinal Black as a business, and that's not a very rock and roll thing to say.
No, that's very smart. That's very smart.
You have to, in order to have a fighting chance of making enough money to survive from this. I mean, we're just about at the point where we can kind of survive off the meager income that Cardinal Black brings, and that's the irony, is that you break it down and look at our incomings, and we're quite quite a lucrative company. There's a lot of money coming into Cardinal Black. There's pretty much exactly the same amount of money going out to keep us on the road, make records, fund all of the stuff that we need to do. Yeah. And I guess the question is, at what point do you? I mean, if the US goes well this year, the idea is that it will, feed into festivals in America for next year, and we will be back over, But then straight away, we're kind of like, well, if we make a decent profit in the US, that will give us a little bit of money to try and unlock new territories that we've not been to yet, whether that's Asia, whether it's different European countries or whatever. I guess at some point you have to kind of draw a line and say, well, these are the territories we're going to try and own. Let's focus on those, and that will give us a little bit more kind of money to actually try and bank and live, have a decent standard of life, and not worry about me having to do all of the other stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis to put bread on the table. But, me and Tom in particular, I mean, me, Tom and Adam are the obviously kind of core members of the band. We run it as a very tight ship. We run it as a business. And that's not very romantic. It's not very rock and roll. I don't know whether we're maybe a little bit guilty of talking about that too openly on occasion. Because
the business part of it is you have to run it as a business, because that's, if you're ever going to make it.
No, it's the music business, isn't it? The clue is in the name.
Yeah, if you don't want a day job, and your day job's not going to the studio, or we have to pick out merch today or a new logo. No, I've got to go work at a steel factory this morning, and I'll be CEO. I mean, and I think that's smart. And here's the other thing, though, Chris. Most creative people don't understand that, because their brains don't work that way.
Yeah, that's the shame of it, I guess, and that's why so many people get taken for a ride and get taken advantage of, because they don't want to involve themselves in that. And Admittedly, when I started playing guitar, I didn't start playing guitar because I wanted to understand how publishing works or how, insert whatever here, all of the things that I've had to learn. I mean, I joked at the start of this call, that I've not had much time to play guitar. I genuinely haven't, because that's most of my day at the moment is spent in front of Photoshop, or it's spent in front of Final Cut Pro, making assets for social media, making merchandise. We have an album launch party next Friday. I'll be making t-shirts for that today and designing that and liaising with the printers. That's the reality of being in a band for me at the moment.
But eventually that'll fade.
I hope so.
Right thing, somebody else will kind of do it for you. And
my last band, we couldn't get arrested if we tried, and the only success we had ultimately trying to book gigs, because we didn't have an agent, so it was me booking the shows, and lo and behold, very few people were interested in dealing with the guitarist, because I guess outwardly that sends the message, well, nobody cares, this is the guitarist himself trying to book these shows. So I created an alias, I created a fake Gmail account, and I would email venues as our manager, and then as soon as I got in through the door, I would find an excuse to loop in myself on my actual email address. Go, right, I'm going to leave you in the very capable hands of our guitarist, who can take it from here. So it's
it's just sad you have to do that, but it's true. I don't care if you're in a creative arts. That's what you have to do. I don't care if you're a book writer, an author. I don't care if you're a movie star. You want to break in. You got to do something like that, because it separates you from everybody else. Even though people, it's just the way it is, and
subconsciously, I think it sends a message that, well, someone cares about them. Someone's taking a punt on them. Someone is investing their time and energy and money into them, and maybe we should as well. So that's worked wonders for me over the years. So
let me ask you about how you guys work together. Tell me about your songwriting process. How do you one or two of you come up with an idea? I mean, obviously you've been doing it for a while. You come up with some riff and go, hey, I think this might do. Tell me how that kind of works together with all of you.
Actually, the second album, this album was quite an interesting experience, because I guess by virtue of the history of the band and the shared history of like 10 plus years, I think it was our manager that jokingly described our first record as a greatest hits album of songs that nobody had ever heard, because they span such a long period of time. There were tracks written in 2009. There were tracks written in 2021. Consequently, I think the issue that we were inevitably always going to have with that first record was making it sound cohesive, because unsurprisingly,
you think as yourself, you think there's cohesiveness to it, but your whole life changes over 10 years, your mood changes. Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, absolutely, and what you write about and how you write. I mean, there's songs that I'm very proud of on that first record, don't get me wrong, but I think it was never particularly going to sound like a coherent record from top to bottom, because it wasn't a coherent record. It was a record that had been written over a vast period of time. So to finish touring that and, kind of have a clean slate, or this blank canvas, this opportunity to kind of create something cohesive, as much as that was initially terrifying, because I'm not particularly someone that can write on command. When I do write, it's, it will be a bolt from the blue that will hit me when I'm sat on the sofa just noodling around, or, a melody or a chord progression, right, or whatever it is will strike me. But to try and manufacture that, or to try and create that artificially, I'm not particularly good at. Tom, on the other hand, can basically work 9 to 5, sit down at a piano and go, right, I'm going to try and write a song, and we'll write a song.
Yeah, I don't do it that way either.
I don't have that capacity to do it, unfortunately, but I guess consequently what we get, or what happens then, is a mixture of that. It will be, there's a couple of songs on the album. There's a track called Push Pull, for example, which I think is maybe the penultimate song, or one of the kind of last tracks on the record. That bizarrely turned into a song, lyrically at the very least, turned into a song about my father, who passed away in 2023. And me and Tom kind of pieced that together not long after his passing. And Tom, weirdly, given the subject matter of that song, Tom ended up writing most of the lyrics for that song, I think purely because of how close I was to that situation. He was able to actually express my thoughts more eloquently than I probably could have at that point.
I understand that.
But musically, that song dates back to about, 2015, I guess, in the sense that it was a demo on an old iPhone that I dug out of a drawer.
Oh, wow.
And that I had a couple of weeks where I was a little bit frightened by the prospect of, if this is going to be the same as the first record, I'm probably going to contribute about 50% to it, Where's my 50% going to come from? Because I feel like I'm, kind of creatively barren at the moment. So I started going through old phone demos, and that was a kind of chord progression or a melody that I came across. And once you get into that mindset of, oh, cool, I'm happy, I'm creating again, other stuff starts coming from, kind of the most unexpected of places. So what started as a bit of a kind of panic-stricken, let's dig out some old demos, suddenly very quickly turned into, oh, I'm writing again all the time. New songs, new ideas, they're coming left, right, and centre. So, what was initially quite a daunting prospect turned into really a kind of effortless experience, really. The entirety of the record was probably written over about 2 months. And that's, but by virtue of the band and the income or their lack thereof at the moment, we're not doing this religiously every day. We have, other responsibilities. We're, kind of all parents, so it's juggling the realities of life with the expectations of being in a band. So it was written over 2-3 months without doing that religiously every day, at least together. Me and Tom booked a nice little romantic getaway at one point and went and stayed in a cottage for a couple of days on our own. And wrote a couple of songs together. So yeah, it was a pretty effortless process, really. Which given the trepidation I went into it with, was quite nice.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, and it just starts flowing out of you, and you can't figure out, well, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything years ago or 6 months ago. Yeah. And now it just kind of does its thing and it starts flowing out of it. And I think all songwriters have the same situation. We can't explain where it comes from. Now, I could sit down and write you a song, but it's going to suck. I could write you a blues song. What do you want to talk about? I can do that. But to have something that people listen to, that's a different story. And that never comes to me except when it comes to me and it's there. But I understand because that creative vortex, so to speak, starts up. And I think only creative people understand that because they don't understand. What do you mean? You could just write a song, can't you? Oh, sure. But can I write a song?
Yeah. It's funny. I have quite a lot of discussions about this with my wife, who is a scientist. She's a biologist. She's a lecturer at Bristol University. So I think fundamentally she is wired in a very different way to me. Oh, sure.
Black and white. Everything's a scientist. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. But growing up, she loved guitar. She played guitar. I've never seen her play guitar. She categorically refuses to play in front of me. But we've had endless discussions about, she would say that, I approached guitar as I approached science or as I approached everything else. It was very mathematical, it was very methodical, it was very kind of, regimented and structured. Whereas she said, watching you play and kind of just come up with stuff off the top of your head, I can't comprehend how you do that. So I think it's, people are just wired differently. And again, to try and explain that creative process to someone who isn't a creative person,
they don't get it.
They don't get it. They don't understand it because it's totally alien to them, I guess.
I wish people could feel that moment. You as a performer and the audience is in sync.
Yeah, absolutely. That's ultimately. I mean, it's very easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day running of a band, and you end up taking or kind of finding joy in bizarre moments. Like for Tom, for example, Tom tour manages the band as well. So when we go on tour, any of the logistical elements of that tour, whether it's booking hotels, whether it's route planning, whether it's kind of advancing the shows and liaising with venues and promoters and front of house engineers, that's Tom. That's his role. He's kind of taken in the band. I tend to do more of the content creation and design work and website maintenance, and then Adam handles the merchandise side of the band. So between the three of us, we've kind of assigned ourselves these roles that we own, and if they go wrong, if we fuck them up, it's on us because that's what we do, And Tom, I think in recent years has got so into the kind of process of tour managing the band that he loves it. Like, I think if you said to Tom, what would be your career highlight of the past couple of years, of Cardinal Black, it would genuinely probably be something like a successful visa application for the US. Never mind the Royal Albert Hall or anything like that. But Tom made the point recently. We were chatting about it, and he said that it's such a vague industry. It's such an intangible industry that, I mean, we're in particular, we're very bad at celebrating our successes because I don't think it's particularly in our nature, but inevitably a moment's success is always superseded by, well, what next? If we've done this, if we can do this, and again, I had a conversation the night we sold out the Troubadour. I had a conversation with someone back home, and we'd just done the show. It was amazing. It was like a long-held dream of mine to sell out the Troubadour. Big Guns N' Roses fan, big Carole King fan, all of the people that passed through that venue.
Oh yeah.
And I remember speaking to someone back home and kind of saying like, so we've just done this, and that was 500 capacity. So I guess like next time realistic, we're probably looking at like 600, 700, 800 maybe. And they were like, hang on. Fucking think about that when you're home. You've just sold out the Troubadour. At least have a beer tonight. Take in that moment. And I think it's just the nature of the industry, and I think how we are wired, that it's hard to celebrate those successes because it's constantly on to the next. And Tom embodies that in terms of, like I said, his kind of high points of the past couple of years are these moments where, because it's such an intangible industry and because there is no mountain to climb, because there's always going to be something bigger and better to do, the moments where you can actually take satisfaction are the moments which are a bit more tangible. They are moments where you get you get the green light on your visa, because that's one way of actually tangibly going, we're advancing as a band, we're going somewhere, this is something that we've achieved that we maybe didn't think we ever would have done a couple of years ago. So you take joy in the most unexpected of moments. And like a couple of months ago, prior to our tour in the UK, we had the idea of putting beer mats out in the venues with a QR code on them that you could scan, and it would. So obviously our album is called Midnight at the Valencia, so it's set in this somewhat semi-fictional kind of place. We thought it'd be nice if people could check into the Valencia. So you scan a QR code,
that's cool.
It takes you to like an Instagram filter, which says Cardinal Black or the Valencia Club, whatever it is, and that they can post that on Instagram. And if they tag us in that, they're in with a chance of winning. We'll monitor the people that are entering those Instagram competitions, and you're in with a chance to win a 5-star hotel stay to come and see our last show of our tour in South Wales, which we did. And like that for me, we had this idea, and because I'm the designer in the band, I was like, well, that's going to fall on me. I've never designed an Instagram filter. I don't know how to design an Instagram filter. I'm going to have to go and learn how to do that.
That's why they make YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was such a kind of like joyous moment of like, well, I've never done that before, and I now know how to do it. And for all of the other cool shit we've done, like the Royal Albert Hall or kind of big shows or achievements, it's weird little moments like that where you can actually pinpoint it, you can put your finger on it, it's tangible, it's real, it's it's extant, and you can just go, that's the thing I learned, that's the thing that we've achieved.
When you guys tour, do you take, obviously you take your instruments, do you always have a back line, or do you actually bring stuff with you?
Yeah, it depends. So it depends where we are. Like ideally, I'm a bit of a gear nut. I like my gear, I like my amps, I like my pedals,
So what is your amp that you prefer?
So the last tour, the two amps that I kind of pair together, I've got a 66 Super Reverb that I bought, and a 62 Fender Concert. And just on a very superficial aesthetic level, I like the way those two amps look together, because someone in their infinite wisdom, for some reason, lost to the mists of time, the reason for which someone turned what would have been a black panel Super Reverb into like a brown panel, which in essence is a fictional amp. It was, Fender stopped doing the brown panel stuff in '63, so a brown panel Super Reverb did not exist.
Now, does that get a 12, or what is it? I know Twin's got 2, but
yeah, it's got four 10-inch speakers.
4 10s, okay.
Yeah, which I think sound engineers, if you're working with in-venue, luckily for the most part we take our own front of house wherever we go, but if you ever come across an in-house sound engineer rocking up with a big amp like that, they invariably shit themselves because they think you're going to be the loudest person in the world. I don't actually like a load of volume on stage. I like to be able to hear the drums particularly well, to know if I can hear the drums, I know I'm in time, and if I can hear myself at least a little bit, I know I'm in tune. So if I'm in time and I'm in tune, I'm happy. And then I want
you use monitors or earbuds? You use monitors or earbuds?
Monitors.
Okay.
Monitors, and the only thing, much to the rest of the band's amazement, who a lot of which have moved over to using in-ear monitors, I use a wedge, and the only thing I have in that wedge is my vocal, just so I can pitch. When I'm doing backing vocals, I do a lot of backing vocals in the band, and I'm still not the most confident of singers. So if I can hear myself blisteringly loudly, I know I'm in tune, and it gives me a confidence to sing my parts more confidently. So, much to the band's amazement, everyone else in the band is trying to dial in the perfect in-ear monitor mix or the perfect wedge mix. And I'm like, I don't need to know where we are in the song. I wrote the fucking song. I know where we are in the song. I just need to know I'm in tune when I sing. So so a couple of big amps, but obviously that's the ideal scenario. We will do that across the UK. We'll do that across Europe. Flying into the US, obviously, comparatively speaking, you're traveling pretty light. So it's a case of beg, borrow, and steal when we get to New York, and then schlep that stuff across the US with us. So I'm very fortunate in that I do a lot of work with Yamaha.
I saw that where you're doing. What is the, and I want to talk about your pedal board in a minute, but what was the driving, because that was one of the comments that said you're usually playing what is it called, Revstar or something?
Revstar, yeah. So I've been
those are not humbuckings. There's something else on them.
So there's P90s on the one that I play, this P90s. So I've been a Strat guy for a very long time, and I've done quite a lot of work with Fender over here in the UK, done a lot of clinics with Fenders, clinic tours, all this kind of stuff. So I've been a Fender artist. What I've found, I think, after a very long time of playing Strats, is that I think there's such a, this is probably not a case for a better musician, but there's such a baggage that is attached to a Stratocaster because it's an instrument that is, so associated with whoever, Hendrix, Clapton, insert Hank Marvin,
Frampton always played Les Paul, that's right, yeah.
But however esoteric you want to go, you will find someone incredibly famous who played a Stratocaster who is is a fan's reference point. And whatever you play, you're kind of immediately, they're going to compartmentalize you as kind of like, oh, well, you play a Strat in, primarily in this pickup position with that kind of sound. You're a Stevie Ray fan, or you're a John Mayer fan, or you're a Clapton fan from this era, whatever it is, I just found there was a lot of baggage with the Strat that wasn't there with the Revstar, purely because when I first picked up a Revstar, it was like the week they'd been released. It was a new guitar design that wasn't immediately or obviously derived from a Les Paul or a Strat or an SG or insert model here. It was kind of its own thing. I found it ergonomically very comfortable. It really connected with me as an instrument. And on some subconscious level, I must have been quite attracted to the fact that there was no baggage. There was no preconception as to kind of if you play a Revstar, this is what you sound like. It was kind of like, well, it's a new instrument. Who knows what the fuck you sound like because nobody's really played them before. And for better or for worse, 4 or 5 years on. Do
you bring your own pedal board with you? Your stuff with you? I assume you can.
So my pedal board is one of the few. I'm probably more specific about my pedal board than I am guitar, to be honest. I think.
Do you have a custom built one?
I built it myself, which, funnily enough, I did a video on it recently on my YouTube channel, just the process of building it.
Is it under your name? Is it under your name?
Yeah, it is, yeah. If you put Chris Buck into YouTube, you'll find me waffling away about guitars. But yeah, one of the comments on the video was, surely for someone touring at the level you're touring at, you should have someone better than you building your pedal board. And it's which I think is probably true, because I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not a professional pedal board builder, but I find it so cathartic. So bizarrely, much to my wife's annoyance, we went on holiday recently down to a cottage in the middle of nowhere in West Wales just to get away for a day, because we have a 4-year-old as well who is chaotic, to say the least. So like we had a couple of days in Italy last week, which was amazing. It was a wonderful experience, but trying to experience Florence or Venice with a 4-year-old is just hell on earth, because he just wants to run off and explore in big crowded cities. So the one
pigeons,
of the few
pigeons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. So one of the few actual like relaxing holidays that we ever get is in this little cottage down in West Wales, and it's just in the middle of nowhere. There's barely any Wi-Fi. There's absolutely no phone reception. So it's just a case of going, escape for a couple of days. So of course I took my pedal board because I wanted to rebuild my pedal board. And she's like, "Can you just not, please?" But I find it so cathartic and relaxing just to sit there with my pedal board and dick about with it. So I probably should have someone much better than I building them, but I find it such a relaxing process. Absolutely.
I mean, look, I've seen the David Gilmour's setup.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a computer and engineering degree to figure out his signal path.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was looking at him going, he's got this stuff and that stuff, and he's going to there, and he's got a code over here, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, dude, there's only like 4 different sounds you can get. So it's
they're very helpful.
And I have to ask you this: who's your strings? Who do you use?
Ernie Ball.
You do?
I've been with Ernie Ball probably for about 10 years, and maybe.
What's the size? You got to know. Tell me that.
10.5, which Yeah,
10 and a half.
it makes me sound extremely discerning, infinitely more than I actually am. So the reason being, I was using tens for a very long time, and love tens. If I'm around the house, tens are perfect. When you're not coursing with the adrenaline of being on stage, tens are perfect. On stage, it's a different matter entirely. I have my right hand turns into Thor's hammer, which is undoubtedly a huge flaw in my technique, undoubtedly. But it's just the reality of being on stage in front of hopefully a lot of people, and you get excited and start hitting the guitar a little bit hard. So I moved up to 11s, which is great when you're on tour. 10 and a half is literally and figuratively the kind of perfect middle ground of, well, they feel okay at home when I'm not, kind of coursing with adrenaline, but they're kind of just about doable on stage as well. So, 10 and a half, they started making half gauge strings probably about 5 years ago, maybe.
That's weird. I didn't know that.
I tried them out.
I don't mean you're weird. I mean, I just didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm undoubtedly weird as well. My wife would attest to that much.
I just want to tell you, Chris, tell the band, have a wonderful tour, a safe tour.
Thank you.
Enjoy yourself immensely over in America. Well, that's it for this episode of The Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by and taking a few minutes and listening to the great Chris Buck of Cardinal Black. Thank you, Mr. Chris, for stopping by and talking to me. They are on tour right now. I'm going to be on tour in America and Europe. If you have a chance to go by and see them, I suggest, if you like that kind of music. And if you're not sure, you can go visit their website at thecardinalblack.com, or find them on YouTube or any of your favorite streaming sources. Also, once again, thanks to the guy who keeps the lights on here all the time, Mr. David Smith with Edward Jones. Thank you, David. And remember, if you need more information about what's coming up or what's going on The Trout Show, just visit our website, thetroutshow.com, thetroutshow.com. And if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, my handle is Texas Rocker. That's me right there, Instagram. So next time, people, remember what I always say. It's only rock and roll, but I love it. See ya.